Hello, hello. My name is James McCool, and I am a little bit washed out based on how white that screen is. That's a little bit too bright. I don't like that. Wonder if I can change that. Anyway, my name is James McCool. I am the owner of paydirt.ghost.io. I run all of the models there and put everything together for each and every sport. Today is going to be a lineup review and a slate review, going over the NFL DFS Week 8 action. It was a pretty fun week. There were a lot of issues in terms of weather and issues in terms of, um, just like various problems with wind and various problems with chalk and stuff like that. So it was an interesting week to build for. I kind of went into things saying, okay, I'm probably not going to touch any of the games that had serious wind issues. I didn't think that it was really necessary to do so. It turned out that it really wasn't necessary to do so. Cincinnati ended up doing pretty well, but it wasn't one of the teams that ended up winning people a whole bunch of money, right? I mean, there were only a couple teams that I really felt comfortable being all in on. Those teams happened to be Kansas City, Seattle, and Baltimore. I also liked Green Bay, but I was very heavy on Jamal Adams or Jamal Williams. So I didn't really find myself wanting to stack Green Bay. Overall, though, I think this week pretty much played out the way that we would have expected it to. Kareem Hunt was the main piece of chalk that failed. If you were not on him, then you ended up doing pretty well. But you did have to be on Seattle and Kansas City, and you had to be on the right pieces of Seattle and Kansas City as well. Whereas if you were on Tyler Lockett, you got screwed pretty hard. So there were some pretty predictable things that happened, and then there were some things that just kind of sucked. But overall, it was a pretty good slate. Today, I'm going to be going over my three lineups that I had in GPPs. Oh, that were not loading for some reason. I guess my internet wanted to drop for a sec. We're going to be going over my lineups that I had in the Power Sweep. We're going to be going over some of the results database stuff, looking at some of the winning lineups and, what turned out to be, the way that you need to approach things. And we're going to be going over the team notes that I took for subscribers. The team notes, I think, have been a really nice addition to the product that I've been putting out. So I'm going to continue to do them, and I've really found myself liking the way that they get put together. Hold on. I'm going to turn down this brightness on this screen because it's washed me out real bad. I should probably just turn on the brightness on these regardless. Cool. All right. That's much better. So anyway, I think that it's probably best to go over my notes first, the team notes, just because they were the last thing that I put together for subscribers, and it is kind of the thing that I put together when I feel like I have the best grasp on the slate. I write these either Saturday night and Sunday morning, or just Sunday morning, depending on the week. But going over these, I think, makes sense. What's up, man? Wish you had more Kansas City triple stacks. I worried too much about the early lead and benching of starters. Dallas was a good play, though, just was not enough. Dallas ended up doing pretty well for Seattle. I think you mean DJ Dallas. He did end up doing pretty well, all things considered. The Kansas City thing, I think that people focus too much when they are looking at blowout potential, and they say to themselves, oh, well, I absolutely don't want to have exposure to this team that is going to be in a spot where they're massive favorites because they're worried about the blowout. And the fact of the matter is that if it's a blowout, then the starters ended up putting up a lot of points, right? If Kansas City ends up putting up 42 first half points, then Kansas City scored 42 points in the first half. And that is just as valuable as if they scored 42 points over an entire game. So blowout potential is a little bit overblown. I think that it is something that people focus a lot too much on, but it's not something that I think people really need to take that much into account. You thought it would be a run-heavy approach, but not the case at all. Teams generally don't change the way that they're going to be going into a game based on what they usually do. Like, there are instances where, like, when the Chiefs blew out the Broncos, it came on some defensive touchdowns, but you can't ever expect that. So when there's a high total and you think that a team is going to blow out another one, you have to assume that it's going to come from their offense and come from the regular pieces. People make that mistake all the time in NBA, where in NBA DFS, you'll have, the Warriors or the Lakers or something like that be really big favorites. And because of that, people will end up like not rostering that team that's a massive favorite because they think the starters are going to sit in the fourth quarter. But if the starters in 3 quarters put up 120 points, then it doesn't matter if they sit the fourth. This should keep you calm for an hour. Hi, James. What's up, franchise man? I hope you're doing okay today. So let's kind of jump into these notes. We'll just start at the top and go down the bottom, and we'll kind of talk about the things that I got right and things I got wrong. So Seattle, I said, main note here is that we won't get news on Chris Carson. There's reason to like either Homer or Dallas's cheap running backs, but it's too risky for the main slate IMO. We did actually end up getting Chris Carson news before the slate started. We got it about, 10 minutes before the slate started or something like that. So we didn't get it with enough time for anybody to rerun any real models. But we did get the news. So there were people who did end up putting in DJ Dallas in their lineups, or taking advantage of late swap and putting him in later. So that was a good play. The 3 players worth of damn are Wilson, Lockett, and Metcalf. Metcalf's likely my favorite with people chasing Lockett, I think. Totally right about that. Metcalf ended up crushing. He was the one who I had the most exposure to in terms of my own lineups as well. My stream is experiencing dropped frames for some reason. Is my frame rate really choppy for you guys? Because if it is, then I need to kind of worry about that. But I mean, we can worry about it a little bit later. I don't think that it'll be choppy on my actual repost on the site. So maybe it'll just be something that we have to deal with on the stream. That sucks. All right. Well, wonder. We'll worry about it later. You guys can still hear me, so that's what matters. Pricing was pretty prohibitive, and certainly a strong spot with how much Seattle is throwing in the red zone this year. Wilson, Metcalf, Kittle is likely the top stack, with Wilson, Metcalf, Bourne being secondary. I did warn that San Francisco would want to play keep away and drop the play count, so to be wary of that, but it ended up not mattering anyway. The big thing there was saying that it was Wilson and Metcalf. That was the stack that I was on, and that ended up being obviously correct. I went with Wilson, Metcalf, Kittle instead of Wilson, Metcalf, and Bourne, and Kittle got injured, so that sucked. But I haven't had a week. I think it's been 6 weeks straight that I've had at least one injury to one of my main lineups, and it's just bullshit. Kansas City, the Chiefs didn't do anything last week, so hard to take anything from it. People may have forgotten that Demarcus Robinson being a more consistent receiver for this team, thanks to the down week against the Broncos. I posted showing that Demarcus Robinson has been playing a lot of snaps with the starters. He is part of their main 3-wide set, and I did end up using him in a lot of my lineups. Chiefs look relatively popular, but nothing huge, and you can get away from that. Don't play Lev Bell, just don't be that guy. So, said not to play Lev Bell. That's awesome. Chiefs looking relatively popular, but nothing huge, and you can get different with them. So, liked stacking the Chiefs. Green Bay, it's Jamal Williams, Devontae Adams, everybody else. Williams underperformed relative to norms on his value and is way underpriced. If you end up stacking this game, it's something like Rodgers, Adams, Thielen, or Rodgers, Adams, Jefferson, and I maintain that avoiding Williams in the stack is the right way to go since you need all the touchdowns to come from Rodgers, which is correct. A lot of people are still trying to justify using a running back in their stack with their quarterback and their wide receivers, especially in a situation with like Jamal Williams. You can't cannibalize on your upside. If Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams were going to win you a GPP, Aaron Rodgers would have had to throw for 5 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns or whatever, without any of them going to Jamal Williams. Winter sucks, but I've said that Rodgers Adams is a combo that I wouldn't worry too much about. I also did note later on with Minnesota, and we'll get to it, that Dalvin Cook was a really, really good pivot away from Jamal Williams. So for San Francisco, I'll quote myself from the Recipe for Success. It's bad process to stack a team that you wouldn't stack any other week just because of the matchup. 49ers want to utilize their running backs to control the flow of the game. They don't want to pass a bunch. That's why they make for a bad stack almost every week. Kittle projects really well. We like him. And then you have some no-name wide receivers, Jimmy G, and a running back by committee that's hard to guess, especially considering ownership and this team not wanting to pass in the red zone. It's an easy fade here. Jimmy G and cash, though. I did use Jimmy G in cash. He ended up getting benched, or injured or whatever it was. I stand by this analysis. There were a couple guys that ended up doing pretty well. I think that both Kendrick Bourne and Brandon Ayuk got there. Brandon Ayuk got plenty of garbage time, but it was after Jimmy G was out and they changed the game plan based on them doing whatever they needed to do. I don't necessarily think that they were a good play one way or another. Sorry about that. But they ended up doing pretty well for the people who did end up using them anyway. So, I mean, I guess people got away with that, but I still maintain that they were a bad play in GPPs, and they still ended up. I mean, you still needed to do just Kendrick Bourne in order to get there in GPPs. Bring it back against DK Metcalf. I'm trying to figure out my my choppiness issue, but that's a little annoying. Let's see, Baltimore, Lamar season and Marquise Brown season. And then I noted that Marquise Brown has been used very, very well. When you look at the way that he has been used, and I would bring up the fucking other model, but I'm scared that it'll crash my frame. You can see in the air yards and in the opportunity search that Marquise Brown has been used very, very well over the last couple of weeks. And then he only got like 6 air yards in the last game, or in this game. So that sucked. It was a really, really good spot. They ended up putting out plenty of points. They just had like 275 rushing yards on the ground or something like that. Sneaky game stack with some obvious options on either side that people are going to ignore so they can play Noodle Arm, Jimmy G, and Chase Mayfield points. I noted that it was silly. People did chase Jimmy G, and people did not play Mayfield. They mostly went for Kareem Hunt. This spot would have worked out better had they actually utilized weapons they needed to utilize. In the Discord over the last couple of days, I've talked about the Ravens and their, I want to call it disassociation from their ceiling. Like they do not want to utilize the same things that gave them such a high ceiling last year. They're kind of limiting the amount of things that Lamar is doing. They're limiting his running. They're limiting the deep throws. They're limiting him in a lot of ways. And it's limiting the offense. And that's pretty concerning moving forward. I think that you probably say, okay, and yeah, Brown was complaining after the usage. Wonder if they feed him after it. Yeah, I mean, I think next week, if they don't feed Marquise Brown, if they don't end up like actually unleashing this offense, then you got to worry about them for the rest of the season. I maintain that Lamar Jackson is the highest upside quarterback in the league, but only if they actually utilize him the way that he needs to be utilized. So it's a little worrisome, and it's frustrating because I did have this stack as well. The Pittsburgh side ended up doing okay, not incredible, but it could have been so much better. I talked about it's fine to use either one of these dudes with Lamar, and really it's probably fine to use both in this spot. Brown isn't going to eat an Andrews red zone target since they get them from different areas of the field. I think this is an instance where they can both eat. So yeah, I was wrong on Baltimore. They just don't want to utilize their pass catchers that well. Tennessee, Corey Davis got a lot of work last week. Noted that he ended up with 10 targets, only 15 fantasy points, but also got 3 red zone targets. Like, he ended up having a pretty good week. It's pretty cheap. The big issue here is winning this game, not necessarily for the Tennessee side, but because I don't think that Cincinnati will be able to keep it competitive. I was wrong. Which is the only way that I see Tennessee needing to air it out. When you've got Derrick Henry, the other team can't stay on the field. It's pretty easy to just feed Derrick Henry. If you're going to stack the Titans even with the win, the easy mode combo is A.J. Brown and Corey Davis. If you're getting cheeky and doing a secondary stack with Tennessee-Cincinnati correlation, a Corey Davis, A.J. Green combo seems pretty spicy. So I nailed Corey Davis. I was right about him. That one was pretty easy for me to see coming. But I much prefer Derrick Henry in this spot and not stacking Tennessee. So, Derrick Henry ended up doing okay, not incredible. He ended up doing okay, but very happy about the Corey Davis play. And Cincinnati ended up keeping it more competitive than I thought they would. So, I think Jackson's under 7K now. Yeah, he's 6.9. Very nice price next week. It's going to be really hard for me not to do that. Cincinnati, Gio with a thick increase in work. Ended up with an extra like 13.5 opportunities. Both these things are cool outside of the win and O-line issues, which present a lot of problems. You don't have a lot of time to throw, and you have to deal with the wind being a bitch as a rookie QB. It's going to be an efficiency drop. I did note that Gio Bernard is likely fine. The price is too low on him, but passing game is an avoid for me. I noted basically that Giovanni Bernard was fine, but to avoid the passing game. And that ended up being about right. Like, Gio Bernard was really the only person from that game that ended up doing well enough in GPPs. Am I going to triple stack him with Andrews or short stack? I don't know yet, man. I never know until like Friday is the first time that I'll actually try to build something. Minnesota, Dalvin is back, priced appropriately, so that's not exciting, though he's likely very good leverage on the Packers if that's your thing, and even better leverage against Jamal Williams. If you plan on fading Jamal Williams, you are likely best off taking Dalvin Cook, since the circumstance with Cook thriving is the best chance that Jamal Williams ends up not being a top running back. So, the reasoning behind all of that is if Jamal Williams ends up not being a top running back on the week, it's likely because the Packers weren't able to score very many points, because Minnesota controlled the game with the running back. Dalvin Cook obviously ended up having an incredible performance, and he was perfect to leverage off of Jamal Williams. But it came to fruition that the reason why Jamal Williams couldn't get there was because Dalvin Cook ended up eating up so much of the clock and being such a dominant force for Minnesota. Jamal Williams still ended up putting up like 18 fantasy points. He wasn't a total dud. But it was Dalvin Cook season for sure. Said that Adam Thielen was overpriced and Justin Jefferson was good, but they can't exist together. I noted that it's very hard for Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson both to find their ceilings together. They do cannibalize each other quite a bit. So I noted that if you were going to go with Vikings, just go a secondary stack of Adam Thielen or Adam Jefferson and move on. Next thing, I have Las Vegas. Worst weather on Slate, big downgrade to deep ball passing and passing in general. Is Nelson Aguilar kind of nice, though? Not in this environment, but keeping an eye on. Nelson Aguilar has seen his workload jump up quite a bit. His averages actually look pretty damn good. What up, Pablo? Hope you're doing good, man. Thanks so much. Josh Jacobs, the best play from this team by a large amount. Not only is he getting the vast majority of the running back work, but it's both direct and indirect leverage on Kareem Hunt, who looks like most popular play on the slate. When I say direct and indirect leverage, what I mean is not only is he direct leverage in that if Josh Jacobs ends up doing very well, that Kareem Hunt likely is not doing well, but I also mean that they were priced about the same, so it was indirect leverage since you could take Josh Jacobs instead of Kareem Hunt and get leverage on the field who built lineups in a way that gave them Kareem Hunt. Los Angeles Chargers. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams can't exist together, and Hunter Henry doesn't get red zone looks. Both running backs look meh. Hard to love this game overall, but Keenan Allen will be really popular, so it's worth thinking about how to leverage that. Best choice is likely Mike Williams, since we know they can't exist together fantasy-wise. You can build a stack of Williams font to cover a premium position while leveraging Allen, which accomplishes quite a bit for low cost. In cash, you are using Allen. So I did want to note that Keenan Allen was like a top cash game play, no matter how you looked at it. Los Angeles Rams. Josh Reynolds has been on the rise while Cooper Kupp has dropped down the ladder a bit over the last couple of weeks. Projection-wise, there's not a lot of love here, and there's a lot of questions about the efficiency of the Miami offense. Could very well be a Darrell Henderson game. People aren't really going to be on him, but his workload has been pretty damn consistent. Mostly not interested in the team, but do have some slight interest in Josh Reynolds and Darrell Henderson. I didn't use any Rams. I wasn't planning on it. They ended up doing badly. Miami defense was more popular than I thought they were going to be, and if I would have known that Miami was going to be super popular, I maybe would have forced in a little bit of the Rams. I'm glad that I didn't, but I might have just for the leverage on a chalky defense. Buffalo, Zach Moss, question mark. Ended up scoring a touchdown, I guess. He and Devin Singletary split work pretty consistently. Big win concerns here, especially considering the reason to take Buffalo stack is Josh Allen explosive deep ball things. With John Brown playing, the volume isn't really there for Diggs to mitigate the drop in deep ball efficiency. Just noted that when John Brown does play, it usually comes with a pretty hefty drop in targets for Stephon Diggs. You can kind of see them eating into each other. I didn't really have any reason to go with Buffalo stack. Cleveland, biggest weather issue game and big wind problems hurting the deep passing and overall game efficiency. Kareem Hunt likely the highest owned player on the slate. No OBJ, wideout breakdown looks like Higgins deep, Landry stays consistent, and Harrison Bryant over David Njoku. Bryant's still probably fine and good leverage off Hunt, since if Bryant is scoring touchdowns, Hunt is not. Overall, Hunt is fine chalk. There's really not a huge reason to avoid him outside of wanting to pay up for Henry Kamara. His projections and workload aren't something to offer any red flags. So Cleveland sucked all over, right? And I used Kareem Hunt in cash. I didn't have any of him in GPPs just because I did want to pay up for Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara, and I wanted to use Jamal Williams. I had 100% Jamal Williams. So there really wasn't any room for me to have Kareem Hunt, and it was pretty easy for me to fit the guys that I wanted. But he was still fine chalk. Like, they were implied to score the second most rushing touchdowns on the slate. They had a pretty good total, even though it had dropped because of the wind. And you were using Kareem Hunt mostly because other people were using him. That it was mostly you use him in GPPs just because he was going to be really highly owned, and it's a way to block out other people. That being said, he didn't pay off. Nobody really in that game paid off. That was a really, really low scoring game. Detroit, DeAndre Swift running away with running back work. That was a joke. Get it? Because he's running back and he's running away with it. LOL. He wasn't. He's not really. He ended up with over the last 2 weeks total of 32 touches, and Adrian Peterson has gotten 28. Like they're pretty even. And Adrian Peterson is still getting like the regular rushing work. It's just that DeAndre Swift is getting the receiving work. Upside feels capped on the receiving options. Kenny Golladay is always available for a huge day with a massive ADOT. For Kenny Golladay to get there, though, you have to have the Lions down by a whole bunch of points. So what you are actually doing is hoping that the Colts offense ends up doing really well, so that Detroit has to be passing from behind. That actually ended up working out. And Marvin Jones was actually the one that ended up getting the big benefits there. But that's the way that you have to think about the Lions. Like, you can't stack the Lions hoping they're going to put up points in the first half. The only reason why you'd ever stack the Lions at this point in this year is if you think they're going to be behind by 20 points at any given time, or 14 to 17, 20 points, because that's the only time they're actually going to play aggressively. Indianapolis, on the other side, the only question mark for me not putting in Marcus Johnson in a couple of my builds is the status of Michael Pittman. And actually, this is something that I want to bring up the opportunity search model for, because I want to check on Marcus Johnson. Because I didn't use him. Yeah, he ended up with 4 targets. And I think Michael Pittman ended up doing better. Pittman Jr. Yeah. No, he only got 1 target. Okay. So, I mean, Marcus Johnson, probably not a thing. But I did like him. If you look at Marcus Johnson, which I guess I'll just pull him up since I have him here, he ended up doing really well in week 6, and even week 3 was not terrible. So it looked like he was ending up going up. He was on a trending upward, and then they had a bye week. They got Michael Pittman back, and he still got 4 targets. Yards per target was still okay at 9.75. Points per touch was actually pretty good too, 2.95 points per touch. So he does have some upside if he ends up in a spot where he could get maybe 6-7 touches. But he has to get plenty of targets for that to happen. So I don't know. A little bit thin, but I did like him going into the week. Not really any running backs that are super valuable here, especially considering the Colts are one of the most pass-heavy teams in the red zone. It's why Jonathan Taylor didn't play most weeks. Total has dropped a bit. There's a reason to game stack here, as mentioned in the Detroit notes. The only way Galladay ends up hitting his ceiling is if the Colts passing game is solid, puts up points. Decently high total, something like Rivers, Pascal, and Galladay could make sense. It was actually fucking Nyheim Hines that ended up doing really, really well. So go figure. And I think that who was it? The other running back. Yeah, Jordan Wilkins ended up getting a lot of work. I think. Yeah, and he had 20 carries. There's a lot of carries for Jordan Wilkins. So yeah, running backs were a little bit weird. That game was weird overall, but I think that I had the right analysis on it. Taylor seems done this year. Yeah, man, I don't know what's up with that. Let's go look at this. Jonathan Taylor. Jordan Wilkins. And I am not going to spell this right. Oh, I spelled it right. Yeah, Nyheim Hines got no work. Points per touch was 2.65, but he only ended up with 5 targets and 5 carries, but ended up with 21 fantasy points. Jordan Wilkins with 18 fantasy points had 20 carries. This was a huge week for him. Back in week 4, Jonathan Taylor outran him, but it looks like they're going back to Jordan Wilkins. I just don't think that they're ready to commit. Yeah, I don't think they're ready to commit to Jonathan Taylor. I agree they don't like him. Well, I won't say they don't like him, but I don't think they're ready to like give him a whole lot of work. I think that Wilkins has been in the system longer, and Nyheim Hines has a carved out role, and Jonathan Taylor is a rookie, and a lot of teams don't want to use a rookie more than they have to. So yeah, Jonathan Taylor seems like he's done, man. But this is gonna be three-headed monster. Like you're never gonna really know who ends up doing super well in this offense. Did you have any Taylor? I switched him out once Mixon and Jones ruled out. No, I didn't. I didn't like Taylor. I was asked a couple times about Taylor in the Discord by Pablo actually, who's a really smart dude, and I didn't have any interest in him. Like the Colts pass way too much in the end zone for me to want to take running backs from that team anyway, especially running backs that don't get a lot of receiving work. And there were a lot of good running backs on the slate. Like you could have Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, and Jamal Williams, who I thought all were in smash spots. You had Chalk Kareem Hunt. You had Gio Bernard. You had TJ Dallas eventually open up. Like you had 7 or 8 viable running backs that you're not even thinking about leverage at that point. So there wasn't ever really any reason for me to go with Jonathan Taylor. And I thought that was kind of a weird thing that people were into him, but they were doing it just because it was a high total, but they weren't considering that the Colts passed so much in the red zone. New Orleans, the Saints had to call up multiple practice squad receivers. I legit don't know how Kamara doesn't have 12 plus targets in this game. Let's fact check that really quick. Hey, 12 targets, man. I'm so fucking good. Yeah, so Alvin Kamara obviously was going to have a massive workload there. I also think Deontay Harris is a very interesting punt play along with having a decent interest in Troy Smith. Thing is, people aren't really on Kamara this week, even though the situation is better for him than last week. Most people are just fed up that he hasn't been producing. Offers awesome leverage this week. He's just as valuable, if not more valuable than Derrick Henry. If you need value, I don't mind going Deontay Harris. I did go Deontay Harris. He didn't end up paying off that well, but he did end up hitting the target prop that I had for him. So shout out to the prop betting tool. Wish you faded Hunt for Cook, who I was worried might be coming off of injury. Being too conservative really hurt me. Yeah, dude, you can't be conservative in GPPs. Kamara floor games past 3. So good, though. Yeah, I know, dude, but, like, look at these fucking floor games. Like, his floor is 20 fantasy points. All year, like, his floor is 20 fantasy points. Even when he, like, is playing with Michael Thomas, he's going to have a floor of 20 fantasy points. He's so good. And he's not even scoring touchdowns. Like his ceiling is legitimately like 40 fantasy points, I think. Pittsburgh, Deontay Johnson is a target monster and wide receiver 1 in this offense. Got hurt. Was bullshit. But actually helps Juju in terms of his fantasy relevance. Y'all know my thoughts on Juju, but it's based on the fact that he's not an alpha and can't carry the load as a top dog. I've quite a bit of interest this week in a stack of Ben, Juju, and Deontay, and bring it back for Marquise Brown as a full stack. James Conner, on the other hand, looks like a solid RB1 if you have interest in the passing game. Chase Claypool is dead. Pricing is nice on this spot as well. Miami, really hard to gauge what this team looks like with Tua at the helm. Newsflash, the defense is very good. Offensively, they struggled. He's not as good as Fitz. You have to give downgrades to everyone involved. Myles Gaskin looks like the safest option overall. There's a good chunk of work for this running back price in Miami. Has been about even in pass rush splits in the red zone, which gives him a decent shot at a touchdown. I can see Gaskin being more involved, and I like him as a cheaper option available in GPPs for cash. He ended up spraining his MCL, but he still did pretty well in terms of like the work that he got last week. Yeah, I mean, for the price, 18 carries and 6 targets, like that's really nice. He only had 15.3 fantasy points, but that's really nice workload for his price. Denver, LOL, these projections suck. Indeed, the projections sucked. LOL, I don't know, man. .gif. Yeah, Albert, I didn't even try to spell his name. It's something that might be interesting if you're punting at tight end. I actually got made fun of on Twitter because I called out Stephen Buchanan on using him in one of his good lineups, and he ended up scoring a touchdown like 5 minutes after I made fun of him for it. It's pretty obvious they're happier on two tight end sets here. This offense sucks. Chicago, this fucking team, dude. Mooney's a legit stud, but it would be wrong to say that he doesn't come at the expense of Robinson. There's just enough upside on this team in general to support multiple wide receivers and GVPs. Dave Montgomery is interesting. Allen Robinson is likely fine, as is Mooney, but you aren't stacking the Bears until they have a QB that doesn't throw like an anxiety-ridden 7-year-old that's only playing QB because his dad wants to live vicariously through his childhood. Mooney did great. Mooney was awesome. So of the three guys that I mentioned, I think that Mooney was the best. Dude, imagine this team with real QB, though. Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson are both really good. You ended up having 6 targets, 11.5 yards per target, 17.9 fantasy points. Like, yeah, dude, he's fucking good. Allen Robinson ended up doing pretty well, too, with 20. Dave Montgomery, 21 rushing carries and 12.5 fantasy points. You see these fucking fantasy points per touch? You see this? This shit right here, this is why you don't want to roster him very often. Because he averages well under 1 fantasy point per touch. And, like, even if he gets 20 touches in a game, even if he gets 25 touches in a game, his ceiling is like 25 fantasy points. Like Dave Montgomery, I kind of get sucked into him sometimes, but man, his fantasy points per touch sucks. That being said, Darnell Mooney he's a boss. New England, LOL, nope. Newton is playing for his job, so there's some incentive for him to play his ass off. But you're playing your ass off with the wide receiver core, Jacoby Myers, and a couple extras from the CSI Miami that are likely not great, so nope. Yeah, just nope. You can't play New England right now. The Jets, fuck, Gase is bad, and the team has no talent. We're just 20-point underdogs. Just don't play Mims and GPPs. He's projected at like 20% ownership or something, getting less work than Braxton Berrios, who's at 2%, so people love rookie wide receivers. Just don't follow the field there. I like Berrios, solid play. I actually have a Jets stack, which is because they're exceptionally cheap and allows you to play the best plays on the slate. I'm prepared for it entirely crash and burn, but it's worth it for what it allows. And that is a pretty good leeway into talking about my Jets stack, which was not the worst lineup in the world. It had really, really, really good game script. Like, they were down in the second half the way that they were supposed to be down in the second half. Had great game script. I had both Berrios and Mims with Sam Darnold and Tyreek Hill. Like, I paired it with a DK Metcalf and George Kittle combo. I was going into the second half like, yeah, this lineup actually has a chance. I paired it with some chalk running back options. Like, the way that I put this together was so nice. And then Adam Gase went and fucking Gased it all up and made it terrible because he refused to pass in the second half because he's a moron. Man, but yeah, it costs less than Davante Adams. This entire stack costs less than Davante Adams by himself. So using this stack made a lot of sense to me, and it's something that I don't regret at all. It allowed me to have Derrick Henry, Jamal Williams, DK Metcalf, Tyreek Hill, and George Kittle, like all of this awesome upside on like the most powerful spots in the entire slate, and Gase just wouldn't fucking pass the ball in the second half, and I was very tilted. I was very mad. That being said, I had 100% Berrios, I think, on this slate. And I mean, PPR wise, he had 8 receptions, 34 yards. Like, he was the PPR monster. He would like if he gets the touchdown, he ends up dominating that price. I did have him and Mims in this lineup to put together Darnold and bring it back to Tyreek Hill. I used DK Metcalf and George Kittle as secondary correlation. Had Jamal Williams and Derrick Henry as top running backs on the slate. Like, I really, really liked this build. This perfect build that Gase just fucked. So George Kittle got injured. DK Metcalf was the Seattle wide receiver that I liked the most. I used Tyreek Hill mostly because I had money for him. Like, I was fine with using Demarcus Robinson from Kansas City or using Travis Kelce, but I was fine with Tyreek Hill because I had the money. So this stack was awesome. It could have been way more awesome. But it was basically a George Kittle injury away from finding the cash lane anyway. My best lineup was a Seattle stack, which was Russell Wilson with DK Metcalf, bringing it back with George Kittle. I talked about that in my notes. I used Braxton Berrios and Demarcus Robinson as a secondary stack. Talked about that just now as well. Jamal Williams, Derrick Henry, which was a pretty common pairing for me. I really liked Derrick Henry in that spot. And then Deontay Harris, who I talked about for New Orleans. Again, I had a lot of chalk here. I had George Kittle, DK Metcalf, Jamal Williams, Derrick Henry, and Russell Wilson. So I really wanted to be different with my other spots. And using those 3 punts together, I think gave me plenty of upside. I could have used... I don't even know who I could have used there instead. I didn't mind Harris. He ended up doing pretty badly, but it is what it is. And then the third lineup that I had was a Baltimore stack. Went with Lamar Jackson, Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams, Marquise Brown, Deontay Johnson, Demarcus Robinson, Braxton Berrios, Mark Andrews, and the Titans defense. The only player that ended up doing well, actually well, was Demarcus Robinson. Like I said, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, they put up plenty of points. They put up 52 real life points, which was awesome. But they just didn't do what I needed them to do. If Baltimore ends up actually doing what they should be doing there, instead of holding back and playing conservatively, this game goes off the rails. But they're playing conservatively right now, and I don't understand why. Lamar Jackson with Marquise Brown was something that I was really into all week. Brought it back with Deontay Johnson, who got injured. Also had Mark Andrews, because I did expect this game to put up quite a few points, 50-plus real-life points, and it did, but just not the way that we needed it to. Demarcus Robinson and Braxton Berrios secondary stack was something that I was really into this week, and one of the reasons why I didn't have a Kansas City stack was because I had so much of that stack as a secondary. And Alvin Kamara, I wanted to use more Alvin Kamara than I did. I wanted him in 2 out of 3 lineups, but I ended up not being able to fit him. I wanted to have one with Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara, but I just couldn't quite get there, and I felt more comfortable doing it this way. So those are my 3 lineups. I talked about all 3 of them when I went through basically in the models. I said that I was into Seattle, I said that I was in Kansas City, and I said that I was into Baltimore. I didn't like San Francisco because I thought it was a trap spot. The leverage was really bad anyway. Green Bay, I wanted to use a lot of Jamal Williams, so I used him instead. Tennessee, Cincinnati was windy. Minnesota, I don't know. I don't like stacking Minnesota. Las Vegas and Cleveland was windy. I talked a little bit about Detroit and Indianapolis, and actually I did try to build a Detroit-Indianapolis stack, but I didn't like the way that it was coming together, so I ended up scrapping that for the Jets stack. Didn't like the Rams, didn't like Chargers, so yeah, of the teams that I was actually going to utilize, I utilized the ones that made the most sense and were still ranked super duper well. And 3 of the ones that offered the most leverage on the slate, which was Seattle, Kansas City, and Baltimore. The only one I skipped out on was Green Bay, again, because I like Jamal Williams. So, that was my stuff. Oh, wait, I should grab my cash lineup, actually. Hold on. And that we'll find in a second. The cash lineup was really, really bad. But not bad in terms of the way that I put it together, just bad in terms of the performance of it. So I'm posting it in a Discord really quick so that I can pull it over onto the screen. Yeah, Montgomery is such a fucking jag. Played him over Dallas because worried about Homer in season long and lost by 6 points. God, that sucks. Down by 80, still give Gore 20-plus touches. He's a psycho. Yeah, that guy is literally insane. I hate Adam Gase so much. Here was my cash game lineup. So, cash games didn't go super well just because, actually, cash games were okay. I ended up making money in cash. I ended up having with like a 5% profit or something like that, even with this lineup, which like it speaks to the strategy of this lineup and why this strategy is so powerful. I just played as much chalk as I possibly could. I played Jimmy Garoppolo, Kareem Hunt, Jamal Williams, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, Denzel Mims, Jonnu Smith, Brandon Ayuk, and the Titans defense. So the pieces of cash that were just like automatic for me were Jimmy Garoppolo, Kareem Hunt, Jamal Williams, Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams, and Denzel Mims. I think that was pretty much like the only way that you could build. There was conversation in the Discord about going up to Russell Wilson from Jimmy Garoppolo, but I mean, if you take that route, you aren't able to play Devontae Adams, who I think that you kind of need to have in cash right now, especially when you have Denzel Mims as a cash game staple and like two running backs that are relatively cheap with Kareem Hunt and Jamal Williams. That there was no excuse not to have Devontae Adams. Like, he gets so much work. Him and Keenan Allen are kind of like super target monsters and just guys that you need to have in cash right now. And they're always really popular, so it makes sense for the strategy as well. Ended up going with Jonnu Smith and Brandon Ayuk. I could have gone the other way and gone with George Kittle and Kendrick Bourne, which would have been another way to go about things. But Jonnu Smith ended up looking like he was going to be really, really popular. And Brandon Ayuk was going to be popular as well. I went with the Titans defense, not the Dolphins defense, because I did not realize that people were going to play the Dolphins defense. That didn't make any sense to me. I thought the Titans defense was in a really good spot, and I talked about it in the notes where I thought Cincinnati was going to struggle a lot with the wind and with the super downgraded offensive line. So the Titans defense was fine. I didn't have any problem using the Titans defense there. Like I said, this ended up with, I made money in cash. I made like a 5% return. So I guess like a 56% win rate in cash or something like that. Like it ended up doing fine. But yeah, it looks ugly on the surface. But the reason why I played all these players was because they were going to be super chalk. Like Garoppolo, Kareem Hunt, Jamal Williams, Keenan Allen, and Denzel Mims all were looking at over 20-25% owned. And even higher in cash games. So of course I'm going to play that combination of players. And then Devontae Adams, I think, is kind of like a no-brainer play. Jonnu Smith ended up being a no-brainer play as well. And then I just have room for Brandon Ayuk and the Titans defense. So that was cash. Cash ended up doing pretty well. Cash was the main reason why I didn't lose my ass last week. My voice is kind of starting to go out, so we're gonna nail out this Millie Maker winner lineup. We're actually gonna enter it into the roster construction tool that is in the range of outcomes, so that we can kind of talk through how you would get to it. So this one is Patrick Mahomes, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, DK Metcalf, Denzel Mims, Demarcus Robinson, Travis Kelce, and Kendrick Bourne. So we're gonna bring this up. I already kind of had this built up in another way, but we will start with, let's see. Start with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Demarcus Robinson, and Denzel Mims. Because that's probably where this lineup started. God damn it. Travis Kelce. Okay, so we'll start there, right? Like, it made sense to use this stack. Like, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill was the top overall, like, the best chance to be a top overall stack. I talked a lot about Demarcus Robinson. It's not crazy to go with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Demarcus Robinson, and Denzel Mims. Mims looked like he was going to be super popular, ended up, 20% owned, so he looked like he was going to be 20% owned. And Demarcus Robinson looked like he was going to be really low owned. So using this combination gave you the most upside for the least amount of cash. And then you had, let's see, Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook. So we'll start with Derrick Henry because I think that that's where it's still like an easy mode choice, right? Derrick Henry, just because he was a really good running back on the slate. There was also DK Metcalf and Kendrick Bourne. So this one makes sense as well. Like, I talked about this in my notes where this was a situation where I talked about Seattle being a spot where they pass a whole lot in the red zone, so it makes Seattle a really good play, and you can bring it back with either Kittle or Bourne. If you ended up with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, you obviously are not going to use George Kittle, so you're going to bring it back with Kendrick Bourne, especially because he was cheap and it made it easy to pull off. I thought you said Mims was a fish play. He was, and I'll get into that here in a second. But so now you have all of this. Then the question is, where do you go with defense and running back? So he ended up going with Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook was direct leverage off Jamal Williams. That makes sense. Like it's not crazy to think that you go with that choice instead of going with Jamal Williams, since Jamal Williams was going to be very chalky. You can take direct leverage on him there and end up passing a lot of the field. And then the Dolphins defense. Were the Dolphins popular? Like, did I have them projected as a popular defense? No, I didn't. That's so weird. I mean, I guess people just did it so they could fit things, but I would not have played the Dolphins defense. But here's where you would have ended up. We usually aim for a LevX of about 5%, so that makes sense. You usually want to end up with a decent top score percentage. This one did not have that because of Demarcus Robinson and Kendrick Bourne, but it's not crazy to get to this lineup. And I did say that Mims was a fish play, and he was a fish play. The problem is that you couldn't use Braxton Berrios in this lineup. You were $200 over. So, yeah, Denzel Mims was a fish play, but like you're not going to play Patrick Mahomes with Travis Kelce and Demarcus Robinson and not bring it back with a Jets receiver. They were too cheap. There was too much opportunity to go around. So you had to have somebody. That somebody was going to be Denzel Mims. And he was super popular. Like the thing here is that you have so much leverage with Dalvin Cook already, and you have so much leverage with Demarcus Robinson that you really don't need to be that much different with the other pieces, right? Like you already are going to be passing a significant portion of the field just by getting the direct leverage on Dalvin Cook onto Jamal Williams, and then also having leverage with Demarcus Robinson instead of Tyreek Hill. So yeah, Denzel Mims was a fish play, and I stand by that. But you couldn't fit Braxton Berrios in this lineup. So it is what it is. Did I consider swapping in cash towards the end of early games? I did and it worked out. Generally, you probably won't, but I was happy with it. Yeah, I mean, you should be. Like, if you feel that you're dead towards the end of the first games and you think that your opponents are going to be having a lead over you and an advantage over you, you should be utilizing late swap. And, like, I can go into that more in the Discord, but it's something that not enough casual players do. You should be utilizing late swap if you feel that you are having a bad start to things and you think that your opponent is having a really good start to things. Because what you should be trying to do, if you're having a bad start, you should ramp up the variance and try to pass your opponent if they are having a good start, because variance is your friend at that point. Like, you want things to go kind of crazy and for chaos to happen so that it gives you a chance to win. Was weather involved in the Dolphin game or just Goff being trash? Just Goff being trash. Yeah, just Goff being trash. But yeah, not crazy to get to that lineup. This lineup made a lot of sense. It's something that I probably could have built myself if I was thinking that I wanted to use Dalvin Cook. I ended up not wanting to use Dalvin Cook, but like I talked about all of this in my notes. Like literally every single one of these plays was in my notes. So that's cool. Like I said, my throat is really starting to go off, so I don't think I'm going to be able to talk through any subscriber lineups today. But this was a good slate. There were a lot of things that ended up going right. I think that I was pretty good about the team notes. I think that I hit on a lot of good things. I think the recipe for success was good. And I mean, we can just keep moving forward through the rest of the year. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and hanging out with me while I do this, while we wait for the election results and shit. Hopefully things don't go to hell in the country today, but maybe they will, maybe they won't. Just stay safe. If you're not a subscriber to paydirt.ghost.io, go subscribe. It's only $25 a month. And we're going through the rest of the NFL season. Going to have some big upgrades next year as well. So get in on that. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will talk to you guys in the Discord.